Welcome to I Wrote This News. Today is January 23, 2022. Here's what you need to know. The rift between Senator Kyiv and Sinema and fellow Democrats back home in Arizona deepened on Saturday as the state party formally rebuked Sinema for refusing to change the Senate's filibuster rules to pass sweeping voting rights legislation. The censure from the party's executive board was symbolic, but it crystallized a growing sense of anger and frustration among liberal activists and Democratic voters aimed at Sinema. Activists have staged protests outside her office and begun a hunger strike to urge Sinema to support changing the Senate rules to allow voting rights legislation to pass with a simple majority of the 100 senators rather than the 60 vote required under Senate rules. In related news, Democrats marked the anniversary of Roe v. Wade by warning the landmark Supreme Court decision could be overturned and urging the Senate to immediately cement the right to an abortion into federal law. The House in September passed the Women's Health Protection Act to ensure abortion access nationwide, but the legislation is stalled in the Senate because it doesn't have the 60 votes necessary to overcome a filibuster. President Biden and Vice President Harris issued a statement saying of strong support for the Women's Health Protection Act but did not specifically mention undoing the filibuster in order to pass it. The U.S. Embassy in Kyiv has requested that the State Department authorize the departure of all non-essential staff and their families, according to multiple sources familiar with the matter. A State Department spokesperson said they have, quote, nothing to announce at this time. A spokesperson for the embassy declined to confirm the report. A source close to the Ukrainian government said that the U.S. has informed Ukraine that it is likely to start evacuations as early as next week of the families of diplomats from the embassy in Kyiv. The source said President Volodymyr Zelensky has spoken to U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken about the matter and told him that if the United States took such a dramatic step, it would be an overreaction. The organizer of a march against coronavirus vaccine mandates taking place in Washington, D.C. on Sunday says he hopes the event will give people the confidence to speak up against such requirements. A number of major U.S. cities including D.C., New York City, Los Angeles, Chicago, Minneapolis, and Boston have implemented citywide rules requiring residents to show proof of COVID-19 vaccination at certain establishments, such as restaurants and gyms. By the way, our partner show, I Wrote This Podcast, has an episode on the issue of mandates and what we're really arguing about when we argue about them. A link to the show is included in the show notes. And what authorities claim was an accident, but to this robot sounds more like either a failed escape plan or the premise for a 1960s children's book entitled Macaque Attack. A dump truck collided with a trailer carrying about 100 monkeys. The incident scattered crates, but not barrels, of monkeys across a road in Monter County, Pennsylvania. The monkeys had been on their way to a CDC quarantine facility and were likely to be used in preclinical toxicology studies. In such studies, animals are given large doses of potentially dangerous drugs to test their safety, while the humans wait safely for the results. One monkey had been unaccounted for on Saturday morning, according to a tweet from Troop F of the Pennsylvania State Police. But by that evening, officers tweeted all monkeys have been accounted for. I join with everyone who grew up watching TV in the late 1960s in saluting this modern-day F troop. Now it's time for On This Day in History. On this date in 1368, in a coronation ceremony, Zhu Yuanzhang ascends the throne of China as the Hongwu Emperor, initiating Ming Dynasty rule over China that would last for 3 centuries. On this date in 1957, Walter Frederick Morrison sells the rights to his Pluto Platter flying disc to the Wham-O Toy Company, which later renames it the Frisbee. On this date in 1997, Madeleine Albright becomes the first woman to serve as United States Secretary of State. On this date in 2020, the World Health Organization declares the COVID-19 pandemic to be a public health emergency of international concern. And what a wild 2 years it has been. Celebrating birthdays today are singer, dancer, and actress Chita Rivera, actors Rutger Hauer and Richard Dean Anderson, and Dominican baseball player Wiley Mo Pina. Happy birthday to all of them. And if your birthday is today, a very happy birthday to you as well. Today's news was brought to us by the New York Times, Fox News, CNN, NPR, and Wikipedia. If you have a comment or a question about anything you've heard today, or if you have a suggestion, please send us a note at I Wrote This News, all one word, at thatradioshow.com. That email address one more time is I Wrote This News, all one word, at thatradioshow.com.
One more thing, if this podcast sounds a little funny, that's because it's also an experiment. All of the vocals were generated using AI technology. Hopefully the show will sound different and better as the tech improves and as we improve at using it. I'm Bob Neese, hoping you have an amazing day. We'll get together again soon.